Hi sweet friends! Today I want to share with you how to make Tepache. It's a fermented pineapple drink that contains anti-inflammatory properties and is very rich in probiotics, the good bacteria that's good for our gut health. Now the basic ingredients for this traditional drink include pineapple rind, some type of unrefined sweetener, and cinnamon. What I've got here is unrefined dried sugar cane. You may know it as sucanat or rapadura, but any type of unrefined sweetener will work in this recipe. Now to make this drink, you need a glass jar. If you have a gallon-sized glass jar, that's perfect. But if not, don't worry. You can do what I'm going to do, and we're going to divide this into 2 half-gallon jars. If you don't have half-gallon jars and you have quart-sized jars, you can divide this into 4 quart-sized jars. The other ingredient you're going to need is water. I'm using spring water. If you have filtered water, that'll be great. If you're just using tap water, maybe leave it out overnight or give it a boil and let it cool because you want to try to dissipate some of the chlorine that may be in the water. The bottom line is we're making a fermented beverage, so we want to make sure that all of the ingredients that we use to make this drink can really help the fermentation process. And unfortunately, sometimes chlorine can slow down the fermentation process or hurt the fermentation process. So the purer the water, the better. Now today we're going to make this beverage just with the main 3 ingredients that I shared with you. But know that this is the type of beverage that has been made for a very long time, and there are lots of variations out there. One variation that's very common, I believe in Mexico, is to put some chilies in this and make it a little more spicy. So that's an option as well. And chilies are also very anti-inflammatory, so you can't go wrong with that if you like a little spicy bite to your beverages. And if you enjoy these warming spices like cinnamon, you can certainly add cloves or star anise or allspice berries. Anything like that will be a wonderful addition to making this beverage. Now, making this beverage in the traditional way generally just involves using the rind of the pineapple, and then you save the fruit to enjoy and eat later. However, I'm also going to include the core, and the reason is the core is very rich in bromelain. Some people may say bromelain. And bromelain is extremely anti-inflammatory. So we can really boost the anti-inflammatory nature of this beverage along with the cinnamon, which is also very anti-inflammatory. Now, we're going to cut off the top of this pineapple and we're going to cut off the bottom. But don't throw this out because you can cut this off. The greens you'll wind up discarding, but you can cut this off along with the base, and you can use this to make a pineapple scrap vinegar. And I have a video where I show you how to do that, and I'll be sure to link to it in the description below. Now I'll just start cutting off this rind, working my way around so that we get all of this off. Now I'm just going to cut off the fruit and slice this up and put it in my fridge. Now we've got all this fruit to enjoy later, and I'm left with the rind and the core. Now since I'm dividing this up between 2 jars, I'm just going to go ahead and try to divide up my rind best I can into 2 separate piles. And then I'm also going to cut this core in half best I can. I'm just eyeballing everything. It's not an exact science, so don't worry. Alrighty, now the next thing that we need to do is chop all this up and get it into our jars. Now I'm just cutting up this rind into about 1 to 2 inch chunks. As I said earlier, it's not an exact science. You will need a fairly good sharp knife and a little elbow grease to get through the rind. And I like to cut actually through the rind side and keep the fruit cut side down because it's a little flatter, so it's less likely to move around. Just a little safety tip. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the core, just cutting this into kind of like bite-sized pieces because I actually want to cut through the core. So the pieces are a little smaller than the actual rind. And this will be perfect to help release that bromelain into the water. Now I'm just going to start piling all of this into our jar. And I want to mention something about the cinnamon sticks. Now, if you were making this in a gallon jar, you might just be putting one cinnamon stick into the gallon jar. But since I'm dividing this between 2 half-gallon jars, I'm using 2 cinnamon sticks. Now, I like cinnamon, and I like the fact that it has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties, but you can certainly break your cinnamon stick in half. And this is Ceylon cinnamon, which I prefer. And these are a little softer than the other type of cinnamon sticks. So if you want less cinnamony flavor, you can certainly put in a smaller cinnamon stick, or if your cinnamon sticks are as large as mine, you can break them in half. But as I said, I like cinnamon very much, and I like that it's very anti-inflammatory, among other things. It's antiviral, antimicrobial, antibacterial. It's just one of those wonderful, wonderful healing spices. So I highly recommend it. Now, some recipes will call for mixing your unrefined sugar with water, warming it on the stove, allowing the sugar to dissolve, letting the water cool, the sweetened water, and then pouring that into your jar. I haven't really found that to be necessary. I find that during the fermentation process, the sweetener will start to dissolve and it'll be just fine. Now, into each half-gallon jar, you're going to put a 1/4 cup of your unrefined sweetener. If it's the gallon jar that you're using, go ahead and put in a 1/2 cup. If you've divided this into 4 quart-sized jars, put in an 1/8 cup into each jar. So in goes a 1/4 cup of our unrefined sweetener into our first jar, and now I'll go ahead and put in the second one. Now into each half-gallon jar, we're going to add 4 cups of water. And if you're doing the full gallon, it'd be 8 cups. And if you're doing 4 quart jars, it'll be 2 cups of water to each jar. Now I'm just going to take the handle of a clean wooden spoon, and I'm going to go ahead and give this a good stir. That'll help get all of the sweetener mixed in with the pineapple rind and the cinnamon and the water. And as you can see, just from stirring it, the water color has started to change and the sugar is completely dissolved at this point. Now all we need to do is put our lids on our jars. You don't have to do brute strength, just comfortably, as they say when you're doing home canning, fingertip tight, just till you meet resistance, and a little more tight. That's it. Now we're going to put these in a cozy place in our kitchen, out of direct sunlight. Ferments don't like extreme temperature changes, so if you can keep this out of direct sunlight, that'll be best. And generally, ferments like this like to be at around 72 degrees. That's Fahrenheit, but if your kitchen is a little cooler, that's okay. If it's a little warmer, that's okay. All we're going to be doing is leaving this out for about 2 to 3 days, and you're just going to be looking for fizziness beginning. It's going to start becoming quite fizzy, and you're going to see bubbles rising to the top and foam. At that point, our Tepache is ready, and we can strain it and enjoy it, and I will bring you back once this is done. I just wanted to pop in for a second in case you're new here and we're meeting for the first time. I'm Mary from marysnest.com and author of the Modern Pioneer Cookbook, and I want to welcome you to my kitchen. I'm so glad that you're here. Well, a couple of days have passed, and now I want to show you how each of these is bubbling nicely, and we also have some foam on top. And those are the exact 2 qualities that you want to be looking for, both the bubbles and a little bit of foam forming on top. This means that they have started to ferment, and it's at this point, a few days into the fermentation, that they're ready to be strained and decanted. Now, in order to strain the Tepache, what you're going to need is some large bowl, some type of large bowl, or in my case, I have a large measuring cup and a mesh strainer or a colander, whatever you have. And then you're going to want to take a flour sack towel or some cheesecloth, again, whatever you have, and you want to dampen this in water, and then you want to wring it out as well as you can. Now all you need to do is just take your dampened cloth, whether it's your flour sack towel or your cheesecloth, and just lay this over your strainer. And then I'm going to uncap these, and one by one we're going to strain this into our lined mesh strainer, and then we're going to let this drip down into the measuring cup or into a bowl, whatever you're using. Now, a couple of things I want to mention. Don't throw out this rind that you've used to make this beverage. Add this to the other pineapple scraps you have, the cap and the end, and use this to make your pineapple scrap vinegar. Now, as this is draining, I also want to mention that sometimes when people make a homemade, and maybe even the ones that are made for sale, when they make this beverage, they will sometimes add the water kefir grains into the fermentation process, right into the jar during the fermentation process. I don't find that necessary. I find that there's enough good yeasts and bacteria, good bacteria, on the core and on the rind, as well as the core, but on the rind of the pineapple to create a nice fermented beverage. I don't feel that doing it this way with the rind needs the boost of the water kefir grains, but that is up to you if you do want to add in a few water kefir grains to help boost the fermentation process. If you find that with the particular rind you're using, that you're not getting the results that you had hoped for. It's really, that's all the kefir grains are doing, is to just kind of help with the process. But the very old-fashioned traditional way of making this generally just used the pineapple rind and the raw sugar, a sugar in its natural form, or a sweetener in its natural form, and the cinnamon. Well, it looks like we've got about 4 cups from our first jar, so that's wonderful. Now, how best to decant this and then refrigerate it? For individual servings, I generally like to just pour this into recycled kombucha bottles, the ones they sell at the grocery store. I don't really worry about trying to maintain the effervescence over the long haul, because I consider beverages like this, even though they are anti-inflammatory, since they are made with a sweetener, I consider them more of a treat than an everyday drink. So when I make this, we generally drink this within a few days. And something like this can usually maintain its effervescence for about 3 days. Now, if you prefer to really maintain the effervescence over the long haul, you'll need the type of swing cap bottle like this. Now, I will be honest with you, I'm not a fan of these because they can break, they can make a mess in the fridge. If you do wind up using them, there's 2 things you want to keep in mind. Number 1, you want to make sure that you're using swing top bottles that are specifically made for food or for beverages that are effervescent. And you can usually find those from purveyors of beer and wine manufacturing, or manufacturing of those types of products. And then second, even if you get the right bottles, I recommend that when you go to store them in your refrigerator, you put them in some type of container. So in the event that one does burst, at least you've got it self-contained. But as I said, I'm really not a fan of these. But if you've got the right bottles and it all goes well, it will maintain the effervescence, keeping this more like a carbonated beverage than an uncarbonated beverage. Something like this can also work well as a runner-up, so to speak, to the swing top bottles. These are pitchers that are made with, and it's a little bit of a joke when I say hermetically sealed. It's technically not hermetically sealed, but it has a twist top here that when you put your beverage in here and then you put this top on and then you twist it, you're tightening it, you're really giving it quite the airtight seal. But again, whenever it comes to maintaining effervescence of homemade beverages, As I said, I prefer just an old-fashioned way. If you want to do individual portions, just use some recycled bottles that are maybe about 8 ounces or 12 ounces. Or if you're just going to be sharing this with your family and drinking it over the next couple of days, just go ahead and get a bottle with a regular cap. It's not airtight, but it also gives me the peace of mind of knowing that I really don't have to worry about anything breaking in my refrigerator. Look at this. This looks glorious. And then all I'll do is go ahead, put the cap on, and tuck this into my refrigerator. And this will stay relatively effervescent over the next few days as we consume it, and that's fine with us. It's very tasty, it's got a nice little tang to it, a nice little effervescence, and it's very rich in probiotics and anti-inflammatory properties. So you can't go wrong with making Tepache. Now, if you want to learn how to make a whole host of anti-inflammatory beverages and foods as well, be sure to click on this video over here where I have a curated playlist for you with all of that and more. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.